Hello, good morning, and welcome to day 5 of the 8 Days of Awe. I'm going live every day at 10 a.m. Pacific time between Rosh Hashanah and New Year to talk about Mussar and a particular soul trait. And our goal is to understand that at the end of the day, I am enough. This could be a mantra. It could be a Mussar mantra that we could say and chant over and over again. And the reason why we would do that is because even if you believe that you're enough in your head, like, yeah, okay, in theory I'm enough, that's fine. But do you believe it in your heart? Do you believe it in your heart? The topic today is workplace stress. Now, I am a recovering workaholic. If you've read my book or if you know me at all, you know that at one point I worked 90 hours a week. And I think I know you a little bit. You've been coming to this page. You've been sort of curious about Mussar. You've been wanting to know more. But probably, if you're like everybody else I know, it's a really stressful and busy time. The country is divided. There's just a lot of anger and frustration. There's a lot of fear. And on top of that, we just have the busyness of everyday life. There's a lot going on. If you're working in a job, I don't know anyone who's just kind of phoning it in at work, who's just like, okay, well, I don't need to do too much. Work can be all consuming. Certainly it is for me. And so the question is, how do we get away from that? At this time of the year, in these days of awe, the Hebrew word is tshuva. It means to return. It means to look within. And I just had a wonderful conversation, a wonderful soul talk with my friend Nancy Weiss, all about a reading from Rabbi Alan Liu talking about pausing and turning within. And when we do that, and when we take a moment to pause, the heart can open. The heart can open and we can start to learn a little bit about what might be going on inside. And that's a little bit scary. That's a little bit scary to look within. So, because sometimes we don't like what we see. So for me, I've been doing longer meditations this week. I'm not a great meditator. A couple of years ago, I was meditating about 40 minutes at a time. Right now, it's hard for me to go more than 5. And in the past, when I've done restorative yoga or meditation or something, what you do is you see what are the thoughts that kind of come up. And it helps me understand, okay, well, what's really bothering me? But now when I meditate, there's no one thing that comes up. It's just like a cacophony of work things. What am I going to do in the Facebook Live? Oh, did I return an email to so-and-so? When am I going to schedule this training? And it's fatiguing and it's exhausting. Do you ever feel that way? I think I know that some of you probably do. And it's also, to me, it's not, frankly, it's just not that interesting. It's just there's so much more to life than these kind of thoughts, even when I'm trying to be there for other people, help other people. So the question is, what does our Mussar practice have to say? Well, I wanted to share with you some of the teachings from Rabbi Alan Liu. And I'm going to read a section to you. Let's see, but I have to find it. This is all about order. And order, a part of it is about preparing ahead of time. And I forgot to prepare the reading that I was going to share. So I'm just going to look it up here on my phone. The book I'm looking up is This Is Real and You Were Completely Unprepared. And this is such an amazing book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend picking up a copy. People are going to be reading it 1,000 years in the future. Hey, hello, Christo. I see you've joined us. Thanks so much for coming out today. I'm just sorry. I'm just pausing. I'm just like reading all of these things, all of these great quotes. But I'm just going to wing it because I kind of remember what it was that I wanted to say. Part of it has to do with a story that Rabbi Ellen Lu shared about he had like one of these like mood ring kind of things, or it was some sort of dot, and when it would turn black when you were stressed, and it would turn blue when you're happy. So he wore it around for a week, and he noticed that he always became, the second he walked in the door of the synagogue, he became stressed. He loved being a rabbi, he loved his work, but that building for him meant he had things to do. And when did it turn blue? When he ate. So he said, well, why is this not a surprise that I'm struggling with my weight when the calm comes from this external thing and not and the workplace is a cause of stress for me? And it is for many people. So how can the soul trait of order help us get a hold of this? Well, I'm going to share with you, this is a figure from the book Spiritual Practice of Good Actions. You can also see this on my website. I know many of you have visited it. And the idea is that we all have these same soul traits, but we have different amounts of each. And we focus on one soul trait at a time. It's like extreme spiritual fitness. And having too much of a soul trait is just as bad as not enough. So if we're over on this side over here, if we have too little order of the soul trait of order, we tend to have chaos in our life. And if we have too much, then we can almost get an obsessive order. It can be the need to control things, and that is not a pleasant place to be. It's hard and it's constraining. So for me, on the surface, I tend to be a little bit more on the chaos side. And the first time that I was practicing order, I said to myself, what is it that I can do to try to bring more order in my life? And so I started with something really easy. I realized that I had a lot of stress in my life because at bedtime I would search around for my pajamas. And in the morning I would just kind of get up and I'd throw them wherever. And then I'd be trying to kind of calm down and wind down for my evening routine. Couldn't find my pajamas. Then I would get mad, I'd get frustrated, I'd start beating myself up. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to put my pajamas under my pillow. I know it's a small, simple thing, but it completely transformed my life. It was just one small act to bring more order. So Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler talked about some of the real benefits of practicing order. And they are, one is what I just talked about. It can just reduce stress. Two, it can save you time, and I had both of those. I had that calm inner satisfaction, and I also saved time because I wasn't wasting my evening looking for stuff. But there's also some things will only work if they're properly ordered. And so when we're thinking about workplace stress, how can we bring order to help us with it? Well, the soul trait of order covers three things. One is planning, okay? Two is setting priorities. And so a trick that I learned years before I was doing Mussar, when I was in my workaholic haze and I was working too much and I was scattershot and working on things willy-nilly. One day I sat down and I just got a big piece of paper. It was one of those big yellow legal pads, and I just wrote down everything that I was working on, every task, no matter how big and small, and I wrote them down in the left column. And then I drew a piece of line down the middle, and then on the other side I started putting them in order. And I set in order of priority everything that I should be working on. And then I went to my manager and I said, hey, here's everything that I'm working on. This is my priority order. And I drew a line under the third thing on the list. These are my top three. Do you agree? We talked about it. One thing moved out of the top three. Something else moved from 2 to 1. But then we had an agreed upon list of our 3 top priorities. Well, based on that, then I had to start acting and executing on that. So if I would get a phone call from somebody and they'd say, hey, Greg, we have a situation. Can you come to this meeting tomorrow to talk about it? If it wasn't in the top three, I would say no. No, I'm sorry, my manager has me working on these other things that are more important, so I can't come to this meeting tomorrow. But I can talk to you for 5 minutes right now and see if I can answer your question. And let me tell you, more often than not, just a 5-minute phone call was really all they needed. They didn't need me to sit in an hour meeting. So that was 55 minutes I saved. Now, occasionally, they needed more from me, at which point I would say, okay, well, let's put something on the calendar for next week. Because by planning for the following week, there was time for me to work it in. I could plan my day around it. And if I had gone to that meeting the next day, what would happen? I would have to work at night. I would have to make up that time somewhere else. You know, priorities are so important. I'd like you to stop and think for a minute. What are the top priorities in your life right now? We're coming up on the 11th anniversary of the Yom Kippur that changed my life. You may have heard this story. It's when I was working 90 hours a week. I'd become a scapegoat for a product launch that went bad. Everyone blamed me, including myself. My grandmother passed away, and I almost skipped her funeral because I felt I needed to keep working. You know, that would have been a horrible disaster if I'd done that. The president of my company or senior officials, senior executives, you know, I got publicly called out and humiliated based upon all of this stuff that was going on. So I was really down. And I went into Yom Kippur. What am I doing with my life? I was fasting, of course. It was 3 p.m, and we were chanting Torah. And I looked down at the translation, and these words that popped out at me: "Don't turn to idols or molten things." Well, my first thought was really dismissive. I'm like, geez, this idol thing, they've been gone for thousands of years. Why are we looking at this? And then this phrase, it popped into my head. It was like a quiet voice that said, you need to do what's best for the company. When I heard that, like my stomach clenched and my palms got sweaty, and I realized that I had turned my employer into a false idol. Because you need to do what's best for the company, that was like our rationalization phrase. What's best for the company is not what's best for me. It's not what's best for the customers. It's not what's best for my family. And I decided that day I needed to realign my priorities to what was most important. I needed to focus on my own health. I needed to focus on the welfare of the family. And within a year, and I stopped working earlier and earlier every night. I started using the rule of 3 for my priorities. And within a year, I'd cut my hours by 1/3 without changing jobs. And nobody at work even noticed. So it was 30 hours a week that I was just completely wasting. And it all came back to this sole trait of order. Now, I wasn't practicing Mussar at the time, mind you. So it's not like I knew that's what I was doing, but that is what I was doing. It was by setting priorities. It was by aligning myself with order. My life began to change. Now, so that's one thing that we can do, is to set a priority in our life. Another is the rule of 3. With our priorities in our life, we might say these are the top 3 things at work. Maybe these are the top 3 things I'm going to do. You know what? I'm going to focus on my health, which means things like going to the gym, which means things like eating correctly, which means getting enough sleep. You know, maybe that's our priority. Maybe it's like, you know what? This is a time where I really do need to for the next 2 weeks, I need to bear down and get this big project done. And work is going to be my top priority for the next 2 weeks. But it's time limited. And after that, I'm going to take a day off, and I'm just going to go get a massage, and I'm going to rest and relax, and I'm going to try to take care of myself then. Because work, for many of us, is an important part of our life, but it can't be our whole life. So, but I want to come back to this spectrum again. because some of us tend to fall on the other end. Okay, we're kind of down here in the trying to get too much order in our life, and we schedule everything, and when things deviate from the schedule, it causes a lot of stress and frustration. And I have to say that sometimes when I'm in workaholic mode, I get inflexible. I am trying to impose too much order. And when you think about it, if our goal is being in the middle, then it shouldn't surprise us that we will, and if we're out of balance, it's not unusual to kind of flip back and forth between the extremes, because it's a spiritual imbalance, it's a soul imbalance, so it will manifest itself sometimes by being too controlling and sometimes by just letting chaos reign. And as we're taught in many aspects of Judaism, the object is to kind of find that middle ground. So now we were going to talk about two things, right? These are the days of awe. So how can awe help us with this? Okay, well, awe is all about awe of something greater. It's about living a life of wonder. One of the passages I was trying to find in Ellen Liu's book was talking about a quote from Abraham Joshua Heschel, which is about living a life of awe. And if we're not living a life of awe and wonder, we're losing some of the richness of the world. If life was really all about Facebook posts and was all about like spreadsheets and getting stuff done, that's not very interesting. The Baal Shem Tov said we're surrounded by wonders every day, but we put our small hands in front of our face and we miss them. So it's how can we connect with some of the wonder that's around us. This isn't like a question where I have all the answers, and I think we need to find those answers ourselves. But one thing that Rabbi Liu talks about is he quotes Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, who is a medieval Kabbalist and Mussar master. And Cordovero suggests that sometimes we need to disrupt our life a little bit. Now, there are unhealthy ways of disrupting our life. We can have an affair, we can quit our job, we can go buy a big car, we could spend money, or it's like, yeah, the problem is my workplace, so I'm gonna quit and leave. And then we get to our next job and it's just as crappy. We're working just as many hours, it seems like there's assholes everywhere. So the answer isn't necessarily in that kind of disruption. But how can we disrupt ourselves spiritually a little bit? Like Cordovero says, well, stop eating a certain kind of food. Go without meat for a week, or use a different type of disruption. And guess what? These are the days of awe. It's all about disrupting your life. We don't go to work on Rosh Hashanah. We don't go to work on Yom Kippur, and that disrupts our lives. I was at the synagogue and I met somebody new, and she was about 10 years younger than me, and little kids. She's like, oh my God, it is so hard not working. I have so much to do. This is so stressful. And I felt bad because I didn't give her very good advice. I said, well, I found that if you stop working, the rest of your life will rearrange around it. And while that's true, that was so completely unhelpful to this person. So whether or not I could just say, and when we talked about trust, we just need to trust that things are going to work out. But whether you're comfortable or uncomfortable, or you're feeling that discomfort, oh my God, I should be working. I'm sitting here at synagogue on Rosh Hashanah, and the emails are piling up. Well, guess what? You have disrupted your life. You are taking that moment of quiet to look within. And then when we're on Yom Kippur, and if we're healthy enough to fast, we've disrupted our life again. We've gone without food and water. And that moment where I heard the quiet voice telling me you need to do what's best for the company, it was that wake-up call that completely changed the course of my life. It was not an accident that that happened on Yom Kippur. Because whether you want to take the spiritual explanation that I heard the quiet voice of the divine that sent me a message that I listened to that changed my life, or whether you want to just take more of a, hey, I slowed down and my mind opened and I saw something new. Whatever explanation is more comfortable for you, you should go with that. I'm not saying you need to believe any one thing. But what I am saying is that if you take the time, if you go through this serious practice on Yom Kippur of looking for awe, of sitting in the services and contemplating, maybe it's boring sometimes, but if you aren't eating and you're not drinking and you're with community and you just let your mind get quiet and you just look around, suddenly something interesting could happen. Chula means to turn, and one of the things that Rabbi Lu says is what we do is we turn within and we look inside and we see what's there. In my conversation with Nancy, we were talking about this. We said we might not like what we see, but that's okay. That's okay. It's okay. It's part of being whole. And this idea comes in so many places in Judaism that when we see those cracks and we see those parts of ourselves that we don't like, that's where the light can shine through. That's where we can truly have an opportunity to be holy. It's not an excuse not to improve, but it's okay. It's okay to have flaws. We all do. The other teaching from Rabbi Lu is a reminder that on Rosh Hashanah the world's recreated. And every day is a new day. And if we're stuck in the routine of our lives and we're just caught up in work, we miss that fact. We become jaded and we just can become asleep. And we don't look at things through the eye of a beginner's mind. If we do something like if we're meditating for the first time, we might have an amazing experience. I had an amazing experience the first time I did this guided meditation from Yoel Glick. And then the second time I did it, I had this amazing experience and I felt so energized. I cleaned my house for 2 hours. And I was practicing order at the time and it was wonderful. Then I did it a third time and nothing happened. These things, they don't always happen the way they do when we have a beginner's mind. So how can we get back to that beginner's mind? Well, Rosh Hashanah reminds us that the world is created anew. It's a new year. It's a new opportunity. Every day is a new day. It's a new opportunity for something really interesting to happen. So how about we try to take a beginner's mind to our life? How about we just accept that we're okay however we are? And then we have a new opportunity and an opportunity for a new day. I would love to hear from you. If you are wondering, how can I find a new day? How can I find something new in my life? Go to the American Mussar Facebook page and click message and send me a message, or you can email me at greg@americanmussar.com. This time of year, everybody's out there buying Jewish books. A lot of people are buying my book. If you'd like to do that, to learn a little bit more, you can go to Amazon. You can click in the preview and get a preview sent to you in Kindle, and you can learn more about my struggles with being a workaholic and how I kind of started on this spiritual path. So you are heartily invited to do that as well. And for now, thank you. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you for day 6 tomorrow.